Looking live.
There's something sacred about this stadium and its setting. There's nothing like this venue, in my opinion, in all of sports.
The setting is about as good as anywhere in the country. With the San Gabriel Mountains in the backdrop, it's always picturesque.
We're going to play football. He's going for the corner. He's got it. Vince Young scores.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Rose Bowl Live. I am your host from the Rose Bowl Stadium, Brian Brantley, and on behalf of the entire stadium team and CEO Daryl Dunn, we hope that you're safe during these challenging times. We would also like to thank all the firefighters and first responders who are battling the fires all over the West Coast. As we continue on our virtual platform at America Stadium, we thank the thousands of you who have tuned in to hear from all of our amazing guests who are key members of our Rose Bowl family. Today's guest is a man who graduated from and played for Columbia University in the Ivy League. He spent 10 years in the NFL with 4 teams, went to the Pro Bowl, was a second team All-Pro. He is the co-host of the show Speak for Yourself on Fox Sports and the author of the book Never Shut Up: The Life Opinions of the Unexpected Adventures of an NFL Outsider. And we are excited to say that he is also a member of the Rose Bowl Institute Advisory Board. So today we welcome Mr. Marcellus Wiley. Marcellus, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, appreciate it, Brian. Man, it's great to be eulogized while you're still vertical, brother. I take it.
Exactly. Now I won't start it off on the wrong foot with about the Clippers, but we won't. But we'll get into that later. That's a whole other discussion. But we're very happy to have you here. But there is a lot going on in the world today, and so we want to check in. There's a lot going on in America. First and foremost, we obviously hope you and your family are doing well and safe and healthy. And the Rose Bowl Institute has, launched a program called the Rose Bowl Institute, which you're a part of. Yes. And we also, part of that is the race and sports series, we call it Jackie 2020. It's a 3-part series that will be a continuous part of the Rose Bowl Institute program. As a former college football player and a full pro football player, and now part of the sports media landscape, where do you see sports and race in America at this point in time?
Oh, wow. What an intersection right now we are all witnessing and enduring in terms of our sports, our entertainment, and the responsibility that we all have to a greater society, especially those with tremendous platforms like our sports figures have. It's interesting, I guess, being on both sides of that conversation and a participant in both categories as just a layman, just a common citizen, and then having the blessed opportunity of being a professional athlete. I think you realize through it all, if you want to change the world, you have to change your world. And just to use sports as a metaphor, you get out there, you want to make so many plays, you want to affect the game, you want everything to go your way. But coach will always remind you, just do your job. Like, take care of your gap, your responsibility. And I tell all the athletes that I know, and I even remind myself on the daily, to look in that mirror, make sure I do my job, be a person of high character, be a person that is accountable and responsible and a leader in my circle of influence. And that circle of influence could be vast, it could be grand, or it could be pretty small, just in your own home, in your own community, whatever that may look like for you. But I just want to make sure I remind everyone they have that power of influence. They can change the world by changing their world. And I think if we had that osmosis effect of everyone kind of just doing their job, taking care of their responsibilities in their world, and having that influence start to grow, I think we will see the greatest change.
That's fantastic. And, famously, Charles Barkley, over 20 some odd years ago said that athletes aren't role models, and of course that became a thing for a while. But today's world is much different. Are athletes role models now?
Wow. You know, it's almost a chicken and egg. It's almost in terms of the responsibility, the hot potato of it all. Athletes are not supposed to be role models. Let's say that. And I say that, and I say that because of my experience. I was in my 20s. I was a professional athlete. I knew that my frontal cortex wasn't fully developed yet. I know some of the decisions I made. And I want to tell all the fans who are raising kids, please don't let us lead your kids. And this is uncharted territory for us, let alone being a leader in those moments. I'm 45 now. I laugh at the 25-year-old me. Like, even when you thought you knew nothing. Matter of fact, you didn't even know what you didn't know. So that's even hilarious to think that athletes are role models. That said, there is a huge responsibility that is placed on their shoulders, and they have to accept that responsibility. My coach used to always tell us that we didn't get paid the big bucks to do the things we want to do. We get paid the big bucks to do the things you don't want to do. And no matter what that looks like to any given athlete, one of the things is you're getting this platform, this amount of money, and this amount of attention, and it comes with a tremendous responsibility. But in a utopian world, you should not look at a guy who can throw a football, dribble a basketball, or hit a tennis ball and say that's the person that's going to navigate my children. I don't like that world, but this is the world we live in.
Yeah. And that's a great segue into for yourself. So you starting out as a kid, you were, and I'll get into the book side in a little bit down the road, but in our conversation, but starting out as a kid, you're playing sports, did you always think of being a professional athlete, or did you dream of that? Was that something in your kind of sphere at that time when you're growing up as a kid?
No, I was a little different. I had tremendous athletic skills in terms of two things I knew I could do. I could run fast, and I wasn't scared to run over whatever is in the way of me running fast. So if it was a parked car, I'll run through a parked car to catch that football. If it was my friends in the way, I'll run them over too just to catch that football. I was fast and I was fearless. That's what I was as a youngster. I couldn't play basketball. I couldn't go lateral. I couldn't do a lot of things, but I knew I could run fast and run you over. But it never entered my head to put all my eggs in that basket. I always looked at it like I'm participating in it. It gives me tremendous confidence and esteem. It gives me a sense of identity, but I'm going to have a safety net. I'm going to have a balancing act between being a student and being an athlete. But I'm going to put my eggs in the student column. And if the athlete world works out, then it just does. It's a blessing almost in disguise. So no, growing up, I never was the guy that was walking around, saying one day I'm going to buy you a house, I'm going to buy you a car. I didn't do it, but it just happened for me. I was blessed.
Absolutely. Now, and to clarify, I mean, you grew up in the Compton and South Central LA areas. So it was a different, as far as education and going in sports and how that was going on. But I also have to laugh because after reading your book, I understand you were the typing champion as a kid. So can you explain that story a little bit? I don't want to give it away because I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love that. So can you explain a little bit of the typing champion as a kid?
Yeah, it's funny. So you bring up my neighborhoods, and obviously they have a reputation for the adversity that we faced in those neighborhoods, the poverty, the gangs, the drugs. For me, the most troubling attribute was the low ambition. It was a community where I saw tremendous talent and ability, but I thought people were aiming too low. And this is me as a youngster, just listening to my mom and father and my family members and then friends, and just picking up on conversations where you didn't hear people living out their dreams. They weren't working in careers. They were working at jobs. People were just trying to get through the day, and they were so close to the edge that everything felt short-tempered. And I remember just calculating this, and I was like, this is weird. Like, what's going on around here? So I actually put more of an emphasis and focus on my studies, because everywhere I went, everyone was talking about being an athlete or entertainer, and most of them didn't make it. So in my mind, I psyched myself out to think it's 1 in a million and you're not going to be the one. Work hard like you're the one. Work hard like you want to be the one, but don't bank on that, because everyone else was. And then something clicked in my head. I'm sitting on the bus. I'm sitting in the car, and I'm driving down the same street, Slauson, Rosecrans, Crenshaw, and I kept seeing the same stuff. And something just told me, start typing out everything you see in an imaginary home keyboard, and just see how that affects you learning how to type. No lie, in about a week or two, everyone's around 25, 30 words a minute. I was at 40. They were around 30. I was at 50. And then they just plateaued, and I just kept going 60, 70. And the next thing I know, I'm in a classroom with a bunch of other nerd types like myself, which I love, and they're from all over. And I'm like, who are these kids? It was a typing championship. Like, literally, I'm in a football stadium of typists. And we're sitting there, and this is not a word processor. This is not a computer. This is a typewriter, Murder, She Wrote. I'm over there, Angela Lansbury with it. You got to type it in. You make a mistake. Oh, well, you got to. And they give us 1 minute. You got the sheet. You type. And then they take the sheet. They check for how many words and how many errors. I actually won the National Typewriting Championship at 82 words a minute with only 1 error. That's the story.
That is positively amazing. That is one of the greatest stories that I can remember. Oh my God. When I was reading your book, I was dying. I was like, oh, it just caught me funny. Let's go into, now you're getting noticed, when you're playing football. And what was that, what schools were coming after you, and, what was that whole time like for you as you're playing football, as you said, and now all of a sudden you're the guy. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, it was a wild experience. Going into high school, I guess I could say these things now with the statute of limitations. I was like a Pop Warner star. Like, families, parents used to come up to me when I was at the Pee Wee field and point at me like I wasn't there and be like, you got to stop him, Johnny. You got to stop him. Number 3. I'm like, I'm number 3. And Marcellus, hi. Like, I'm eating chili cheese Fritos and sitting there with a Tiki Punch soda. And these people were pointing at me like I'm not here. And, I get recruited to go to high schools, and I end up choosing kind of like our local path of high school, which was Westchester High School. And a blessing in disguise occurs. I go from being known in my entire world, my universe, as the fastest little dude you know. You do not want to race Marcellus. I don't care how old you are. You could be a 12th grader. Don't race him, and he's in the 8th grade. My family members, I used to go over their house and in front of my grandma's house and race light pole to light pole, adults, and win money. Like, it was just funny. And then I get to high school, and I have what they call Osgood slaughters, which was some knee issues and tenderness and soreness, but it's also a precursor for a growth spurt. It's basically telling your body, you're about to grow, but right now it's a little awkward phase. So I go from being a 5-star 9th grader to like a 3-4 star, if I'm being nice to myself, athlete. And that changed my mind. That changed my understanding of how fickle your body is and how fickle sports is, and how I really had to make sure I kept my focus on my education, because that was something that was sustainable and wasn't as fickle. So I'm still getting recruited. I'm still a big prospect. I could have played in the Rose Bowl if I would have chosen UCLA, which was one of my 5 final schools. UCLA, Cal Berkeley, Columbia, of course. Arizona State, interesting enough, because the same coach that was at Cal went to Arizona State, and that kind of narrowed it down for me. And the last school was a smaller school that I had a lot of interest in, and it was called St. Mary's up north. So I could have went basically Pac-10 schools outside of like USC and outside of like Stanford, like the big dogs are like, yeah, you still had that Osgood Slaughters, brother. Chill. So it was interesting. I approached recruiting like it was supposed to be approached, I think. Student, athlete. I didn't flip the order. I kept it in priority. And obviously we know what I chose.
Yeah, absolutely. And exactly. And that leads us into Columbia. I mean, you chose, again, from South Central LA, Compton areas, and now you're going all the way to the East Coast to go to Columbia University. Was that the first time you'd ever been back that way to even go to school? So what was, I mean, that transition, Southern California, New York City, Ivy League school, what was that for you, for going and starting at Columbia?
Yeah, it was wild. It was social shock. First time in New York City ever. First time around falling snow. I went to Big Bear one time when I was like 9 years old, but it was already planted fake snow. And I was like, but first time seeing snow come down. It was amazing because I grew up in Los Angeles, and our rival city always felt like New York City, whether it was from the music and hip hop, or it was the break dancing, or just the culture. It always felt like LA versus New York. Mm-hmm. So here I am having the opportunity to go to New York. I was like, I'm going to like one of the movies I used to watch and see Beat Street or something like that. It was amazing. And you land in New York and immediately the social shock kicks in. It's a pedestrian city. People are walking. And I'm like, in LA, everyone's driving. So I'm like, why are all these groups of people just everywhere? Like, where's my social space? Move. And people are brutally honest in New York. They don't have the same cordiality that we do in LA. So they're cursing. There's expletives going left and right. And these are from like public service workers, like your bell cap. Like, you're like, dude, why are you cursing me out? You're supposed to be trying to get a tip. It was just weird. And so I was intrigued by that. I also had the anxiety, maybe even fear of football may not work out. So I was really excited to go to an Ivy League school just for the academic reputation, the education, and just also the branding, being real, knowing that my story would sound so different coming from Compton, South Central to an Ivy League school than to a traditional football powerhouse or football factory. So I took that into consideration as well. New York was amazing, as New York City is. And in short, the thing that really made my decision easy was we were sitting there at the top of the Empire State Building. Imagine this. And it's a select few of us as recruits. And our head coach, Ray Tellier, is sitting there, backdrop New York City skyline. I mean, this is like out of a movie. And he's like, guys, I want you to come to Columbia, blah, 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 the whole speech, whole spiel. We've all heard it before. But he says, here's a challenge you may not have heard before. Do you want to go somewhere and carry the torch, or do you want to go somewhere and light the torch? When he said that, he didn't know. He already had me. I kept a poker face on. I kept the smooth and calm glad of the visits. But I was like, oh, I'm sold. I'm coming here. And I wanted to be whoever I was, which some people told me was going to be a big fish in a little pond in terms of athletics. So it all just came together like Voltron for me. And New York, Columbia was my choice.
Fantastic. And that freshman year, I mean, you were playing both ways. You were playing, you were running back as well as a D end, right? And so in the Ivy League, and you're going to class. So how, that freshman year, what was that like going from high school to college, and now you're playing in the Ivy League? So what was that like for you?
Overwhelming. Everything was like, whoa, like when we were talking before, should athletes be role models? I'm like, when I was 18 and I went to Columbia, and I had no idea the level of academic depth and the level of pride so many had in academia. Like the same pride, and I hate to generalize like this, but this is the way it felt. The same pride all my friends had about being an athlete. Everyone wanted to play in the pros. Everyone wanted to be a rapper or entertainer. I got to Columbia, everyone wanted to use their brain to become something successful. They all were looking at ways to climb that mountain without using their body at all. And it was just eye-opening. I was like, none of you guys are even thinking about going pro? And they're like, no, because we can't. Duh, we ain't stupid. We're just having 4 more years of PE. Like, basically, that was them on the football team. 4 more years of this, and this is a wrap. And I'm sitting there like, I kind of want a little more than that. But what a way to get immersed into how great and grand and vast the world opportunities are. I was meeting 2nd and 3rd generation kids of Ivy League alums and billionaires kids, and one kid who came to school in a helicopter and was getting $25,000 a month in 1992. And he was the guy to go to the pub with. Let me just tell you that. But the point of it is, it was just eye-opening, but overwhelming. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared even for just the collegiate leap of athletics. I did well, but whoa, there was so much more to it. And in terms of academics, I just didn't understand how deep those waters were until I got to Columbia.
Sure. And you know, from that perspective, from the football perspective, you came in freshman year, you guys are 2-8. And Columbia was, you know, they had the longest losing streak and all that other stuff back in the 80s and, you know, and all this other stuff. And then, but then by the time you're a senior, you go 8-2. And, you know, you set a lot of records. You personally set a lot of records while you were there, playing both ways. But one game stands out, the Yale game, you know, and everybody has that one game. And that one, you had 2 sacks, a forced fumble, forced and recovered fumble, excuse me, had an interception and a rushing TD. That game you can only dream of as a kid, you know. And what do you? And Sports Illustrated, actually, you were the defensive player of the week for Sports Illustrated, which again, coming from an Ivy League school for Sports Illustrated, that's a big time deal. What do you remember about that game against Yale?
Oh, I remember hearing the stat line after it, because it's so weird when you're in your zone. Like you said, you can't dream of a game like that. You can't say this is the night I'm gonna go to bed and wake up and that's gonna happen tomorrow. But it happened, and thank God it happened one play at a time. I didn't feel it all at once. But then someone after the game was like, "Dude, do you know what you did in that game?" And I heard it, and I was like, "That's fresh." Like old school. That is fresh. And then 2 things happened, and the first one was I'm at an Ivy League school and that happened. Man, if I was at Florida State or Alabama and that happened, oh my God, I wouldn't have made it home without everyone just swarming me. But then what my coach had told me, same backdrop, skyscrapers, skyline in the Empire State Building. If you play in New York City, your local newspaper is the New York Times. The whole world will know about you if you go to Columbia. So it's not small time football in that respect. So I was like, oh, this is amazing. Great opportunity. And then Sports Illustrated put me in the magazine as the player of the week in the entire country. And I think that's the first domino to fall in terms of national recognition and NFL attention. But it was an amazing time on campus that night. It was even better time when Sports Illustrated came out, I think, the next week. And I hung around that guy that got that $25,000 a month.
I know.
Had a good time.
Absolutely. So, you know, and Columbia, and for those who are watching, for those of you who don't know, 4 Ivy League schools have played in the Rose Bowl, and Columbia is one of them. And not only did Columbia play in the Rose Bowl in 1933 season, 1934, Rose Bowl game against Stanford, Columbia won 7-0, which is it was still arguably one of the greatest upsets in Rose Bowl history. Marcellus, did you even know that before or during your time at Columbia? But even before that, did you even know Columbia had played in the Rose Bowl?
No, I didn't know before that. Trust me, leaving Columbia, I knew that for sure, because I didn't have too much ammunition against these big school guys. But that one was in my back pocket. I learned it quickly. It's funny to hear that. It brought me such high esteem in terms of our program. few people don't even know that the Ivy League started football. Like, it's amazing. So when you have to go into the history books, the annals, to kind of grab those nuggets out, it does give power to us little small schoolers, Ivy Leaguers out there. But trust me, when I got to the NFL, by the time I was there, I would throw 7-0 Stanford, Columbia, in everybody's face. They're like, dude, nobody was even alive then. Didn't matter to me. I still felt the love.
That's fantastic. So now you're done at Columbia. In 1997, you were drafted by the Buffalo Bills in the second round. The Bills were just finishing that unbelievable run that they had, the 4 straight Super Bowls, Jim Kelly, the K-Gun offense, Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed. You have a fellow defensive end and Bruce Smith, Hall of Famer, and all these guys. Yes, all these guys. But this was a slightly different Bills team. A lot of those guys had moved on to other teams and or had retired or were about to retire. So most of the core guys are gone. So what did what was it like going to the Buffalo Bills during that time? And did you have a welcome to NFL moment?
Yeah, I think the first thing was, like, your dreams are reality. And for me, it was a weird dream because I never wanted to buy into it, because I never wanted the disappointment and the consequences that come from not accomplishing that and not taking care of your academics and other things. So I never bought into the dream, and here comes the dream smacking me in the face in 97, like, I'm here for you. And it became my reality, and it was amazing. My thoughts, my emotions walking into that locker room, and you grow up, and these guys are heroes. These guys are on commercials and on television, and you never think you could ever touch them, like be in that world. You could never cross over into that reality. And then you're literally getting off an airplane with a guy with a polo Buffalo Bills shirt on who's escorting you VIP style through the entire city to the stadium. And he walks you into that locker room, and you look around, and this is exactly how it happened. You look around, I look to the left, it said Reed, 83, Andre Reed. I'm like, God. And then you turn quick left, and it says Thomas, 34, Thurman Thomas. I'm like, and then I look to the right, and 2 lockers over, Smith, Bruce Smith, 78, greatest defensive end ever. And then you see all of these names that you recognize, and then you see your name, except it's written with a Sharpie on some tape, not like laminated and all engraved like theirs. But the point is, you're there. And my locker was 2 lockers away from Bruce Smith. And there was no one in between us. It was just Bruce, and he was just Bruce, so he had a spare locker. And then it was me. And I was like, this is insane. And on that same visit, you see Jim Kelly just walking around. He just retired. And he's like, hey, buddy, congratulations. Welcome to the family. You're like, family? What the hell is this? So all of that was amazing, and it was impossible to completely internalize how much joy I was feeling. My welcome to the NFL moment, I got 2 of them real quick. First one was not a good one. You got to get hazed in the NFL. They don't do it as much now, but back in 97, rookie hazing was a thing. Let's just say 3 or 4 or 12 300-pound veteran Buffalo Bills found a way to take me to a goalpost, throw baby oil, baby powder all on me, throw water, throw ice cubes at me, and clothing was optional, let's just say, in that moment, and it was freezing. So that was my welcome to NFL moment. But the one that is kind of inspiring is a full circle moment. I grew up wanting to be Eric Dickerson because I was a running back, and John Elway, that was my favorite player. Eric Dickerson, John Elway. First game ever as a Buffalo Bill, we fly preseason game on the road to Denver, Mile High Stadium. I walk out on that field. First thing I realized, I can't breathe. What the hell's going on? Oh, they were like, it's Mile High, dog. Like, it's going to be tough to breathe in this game. But I was sitting there as a backup, 50-yard line. We're looking in this end zone. 50-yard line the other way is Denver warming up. Something told me, turn around, look at them while they warm up. But when I turned, 3 feet away from me was number 7, Elway. And it wasn't the Elway from Foot Locker jersey. It was John damn Elway. That close to me, man. That was my full circle welcome to the NFL moment.
That's fantastic. I can only imagine. And speaking of which, both those teams, played in the Rose Bowl for the Super Bowl. Both those against the Giants and the Bills against the Cowboys. So now you have your career. You're in the NFL. You establish yourself, and you're moving on, and you can see your progression and how you're playing. And you ended up, having a great season that last season in Buffalo, and then you end up going to San Diego and you make the Pro Bowl. And I mean, you had, I think, 13 and a half sacks, and you were the force. So what was it that clicked and that led, as you progressed in Buffalo, and then that click one more season over and you're in San Diego? What was it that clicked for you? And then what was it like to play in the Pro Bowl in Hawaii?
Yeah, for me, I was a late bloomer to the position. Like you said, I was a two-way player, but most people had a focus on me being a running back until basically my senior year of high school. And that's when teams were recruiting me to be a safety. All the big Pac-10 schools were like, we're going to switch you to safety because we see a guy that has a great size potential and that can move. That's a safety to us. And Columbia was like, you can play any position you want. Just come to Columbia, let alone running back. So I was like, okay. But I only played defensive end my last 2 years at Columbia. Mm-hmm. So I was late to the party. And so I get to Buffalo, and I'm behind the greatest defensive end ever in Bruce Smith and Phil Hansen, who is extremely underrated and was a tremendous technician. Excuse me. So I'm behind 2 great guys to learn from, the greatest in one of them. So I just kept soaking it in. And all I was waiting for when I knew I was ready, and late second year, third year, I was like, I think I'm ready. Maybe that was my ego talking, but my 4th year, I got my opportunity to full-time start, and I was ready. I started off slow because I had a back surgery, that training camp, that off season. But I ended up with 10 and a half sacks. Mm-hmm. And then I was a free agent. I got to pick where I wanted to go. I was the number 1 free agent in my position. It was like insane. I'm like, what, me? And I go to San Diego with a lot of fanfare. Mm-hmm. So that helped as well. I was trending in the right direction. I was young, and the arrow was pointing up, and now I had attention. And I go to San Diego. I break my foot week 1. I missed 2 weeks. I come back after surgery, and I still have 13 sacks on the broken foot. So it all worked out. But I will tell you this, there was a chunk of flesh taken out of me in playing through all those injuries. Mm-hmm. And as quickly as I rose is as quickly as I fell.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and that's, you hear that story a lot in the NFL. But you did play 10 years for 4 teams, and it's absolutely fantastic. So let's go into the retirement part. After your 10-year career is finished, you made a transition into the sports media world at ESPN, and now you're at Fox. What did you bring from? You had a lot of experience on the field, but what did you bring? What did you take from the playing field and transition into your business life or life after football, your sports media life? And then what were the challenges of trying to transition, into that next career?
Yeah, you hear it a lot that sports is a microcosm, especially football, the ultimate team sport of life. It's a microcosm of life. And there's so many attributes you can take from football that, frankly, if you bring them with confidence to the real world, I think you have a leg up on people in the real world. Work ethic. Oh, my God. To make it in the NFL is so difficult, just to make it. And then to make it within the NFL is so difficult. It's so painful. People don't know how many days I couldn't even walk, but I had to run for 3 hours on a Sunday, or worse, on a Wednesday when I can't even walk to practice, and I still have to find a way to get the job done. The mindset it takes, the ability to compartmentalize. Like, yeah, mama's not happy right now. My girlfriend needs more tickets. My friends are trying to stay the night when I got curfew. Like, I got to still focus in on the task at hand. So many attributes, pain tolerance. It's insane. However, when you get to the real world, so many athletes lack the same confidence they applied on the field into the real world. And I see it get lost in that translation, and it's pretty sad to watch. The toughest thing about the real world is there's no scoreboard like in football. Football is objective, meritocracy. Hey, I knock you down. That is a sack. I don't give a damn what you felt, what you thought. Was it hard? Was it soft? Was it 1 yard? Was it 100 yards? It was a sack. You can get into the real world. You can make a play, but then your boss or the company say, like, we need more. You be like, what you mean more? I just got a sack. What you mean more? And in the real world, the scoreboard is subjective. It's like based on opinion, and it's forever wavering. And it's just a weird place to kind of grasp for a world that's been regimented and a world that we know what we get from every action. You don't get that same kind of direct response in the real world. So you got to have a different level of patience and learning of process. So for me, I was thankful and blessed to be around all those Columbia people who never in their right mind and in their greatest fantasies thought that they were going to play sports and be at the top of the mountain. So I really went back to some of those days and some of those memories and experiences with people who never even had the leg up I had. 10 years in the NFL and all of those memories, and to be frank, all of those earnings that put me in a different position than if I didn't play in the NFL. I had to remind myself that I actually had an advantage that I needed to take full advantage of.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, the mentorship part of it. So, I mean, in sports, you talk about mentors and leaders, and so what did you learn in the locker room? Like, so what lessons did you learn in your career? Sportsmanship, leadership, respect, ethics, all that, being a good teammate. What did you learn for yourself and still carry to this day?
Oh, man, that locker room is the best workplace in the world. Nothing like it. And that's what guys miss the most. Mm-hmm. You don't miss practice at all. You definitely don't miss training camp. You miss the locker room and you miss game day. You miss walking out of a tunnel and hearing 53 guys with cleats on concrete, and then it gets quiet. It gets quiet because now you're not on the concrete. You're on the grass or the turf. And then you see the light, and then you see 80,000, and you hear them roar based on what you do. You miss that. And in that locker room, it's amazing because it's such the greatest workplace because of the direct line of communication. All the different inputs. Everyone is from somewhere else, different backgrounds, different likenesses, different worlds, different opinions, different politics, religions, but we all put our hand in the middle to try and accomplish a goal greater than every individual, a collective goal. And then you get into the real world, you don't get that same direct line of communication, and you don't always get every hand in the middle trying to do it for the team. So I think that's what I miss the most. Is like, no matter what the problem was, and when I was a football player, you bring it in that locker room, we gonna slice and dice it up and get to the answer, or at least the root of the problem. Sure. And I miss those moments in the real world because so much of the real world is almost like you have to protect sometimes your valuables because you never know if the next person is really on your team or they're trying to actually be your opponent and beat you, even though you're on the same team.
Sure. And that's it really is amazing. The locker room, the professional locker room it's a pretty special place. Yes. Okay. So Marcellus, you wrote a book called Never Shut Up: The Life, Opinions, and Unexpected Adventures of an NFL Outlier, on your life and career and your opinions on things. What made you decide to write a book? And, because there's some great stories in there. And then what did your family think of the book when it came out. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, writing the book, so many people that knew my journey intimately, better than the average Joe, was like, you got to write the book, brother. Man, your road was not the yellow brick road to success, to the NFL, to any of your accomplishments. So you just got to write this book to inspire all of those who want to take a road less traveled, or all of those who want someone else to look at and look towards in terms of inspiration to do something different or to make that difficult choice. So after a few years of pounding me in the head, I finally said, okay, I get it. Let me make sure I share these experiences. I remember going through the process with my family, and the first thing they looked at me like, hey, all right now, hey, okay, how much of this book is going to be real and authentic? And I was like, and it was weird. It was a weird pressure. Everyone was like, what you going to say in this book? Is this Jose Canseco style? Like, what you doing? You outing everybody? And I was like, look, this is how it's going to go, because you know me, I'm authentic. I am going to first talk good and bad about me. So therefore, once I put myself out there, all of you guys just got to fall in line. And I'm going to make sure that I protect the guilty, not the innocent. I always protect the guilty. I make sure I'm not blowing up any happy homes. If you got away with it, I'm not going to be the one that tells on you. All of those kind of things. But still, I had to go to the core of the story, the issues, even if I protected them in that process. So it was amazing, man. Therapeutic, as you've heard before about people who've written books. But more than that, it really inspired me to just continue to want to grow, to continue to want to share with others, and kind of learn from everyone else's response to the book, the wisdom of the crowd. Like, so many people took so many different things from the book. If I had to write down the 10 things I thought that was the most exciting and captivating things in the book, it would not match what most people think. They look at it differently. They're like, dude, you were a typing champion? I'm like, that's cool to you? Like you, Brian. Like, but the point of it is, that's where you never know where you find inspiration, man. And that's the most rewarding part.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, for those who are watching, this is not a book publicity thing, but I tell you right now, do yourself a favor and check out Marcellus's book. It's absolutely fantastic from start to finish, and it will make you laugh and make you think. And it's kind of great because Marcellus, being the book nerd that he was as a kid, turns around and writes a book. So now we go into something that you're personal to you, and you've spoken at various platforms regarding Fix the Family, Fix the Future. What is that about, and why is it important to you?
Yeah, because, it's interesting. I was having this conversation about my road and just getting to where I am right now. And I don't wear my scars for everyone to see, but I don't want people to ever confuse that with me not walking wounded or having pain or coming from the humblest of beginnings. With all the conversation right now about injustices and equality, I came from the bottom of this system where the weight was heaviest. Inner city, poor, black. Like, I was at the bottom, and I remember so many moments of despair. Not only me, my family, my surroundings. And I was able to navigate. I was able to focus. I was able to prioritize. I was able to be blessed, have grace, mercy on top of all the things I did work for, quote unquote, lucky, as people want to say. I'm in this position now because it's an experienced position. And when I look at all the ills and I look at all the issues, there are some common denominators that I look at and I say, wow, if there was a greater emphasis or focus on this, it could really absolve some of these issues or some of these ills. And you can't fix everything, but you can certainly mitigate some of these issues. And one of them is, if we were really to turn our focus, all people, because this is affecting all, this is not a black or white issue, this is an all issue, to restore what a family unit looks like and structure, and in terms of commitment to the family. Like just simple things, like don't bring a life into this world unless you know the value of your own life and the commitment and the value of that commitment to that new life. I don't care what happens. I don't care what baby daddy, baby mama went. I don't want to hear it. Fix the family. You fix the future. I'm a big believer. I had a conversation with a couple of my friends before of in this world, especially in your rearing years, your formative years, your years where you're really learning who you are in personality and an acumen, that you are really building up your hardware. You're building the computer. When you get to an adult phase and your young 20s and carry on from there, life just is throwing you software. And if you haven't built up your hardware, it's not going to function properly. If you didn't build up that engine, that computer, that RAM, whatever the hell you need to apply all types of software, you're going to struggle. And I will remind people, life's a competition between you and yourself. Mark Twain said that. And in this world, it's even more competitive than that, because if you have struggles, if your spinning wheel is on because you can't deal with this software, the newest issue in your world, and someone else across the globe or even across the neighborhood or across the city can actually process that, they're going to have a leg up. They're going to have an advantage. And it's just this lifelong almost competition to be the best you, but also you got to be better than someone else to accomplish. So how do you distill this? How do you cut through? Fix the family that is producing, that is supporting, that is growing these children, and then you may fix the future in terms of when they have to apply themselves to all the world and all the issues.
Oh, fantastic. And just a couple more questions, and going into and a little bit of that is, how can your platform and what you played, from the time you were a kid and pro, and you play at the highest level, and you've seen it, and we talked about the locker room and everything else, how can sports unite people in this time of uncertainty?
Yeah, I think one is just in symbolic nature. As deep and as shallow as it may seem, it's a real thing to watch different likenesses and backgrounds and all these different appearances all come together and fight for a common goal. Like just that in this core principle is encouraging to all. It's amazing. You may not like your neighbor because in part you don't know your neighbor. A lot of fear of the unknown happens in our world where you just don't know the other person, and that turns into a distance that we now want to term as hate or dislike, when it's really just lack of familiarity. We just don't know them. But trust me, you guys meet at a wedding and they put on September by Earth, Wind, and Fire. Everybody dancing. Like, I don't give a damn who you from. Hey, that's catchy. Like, we like so much more in common than we dislike. So we have so much more in common than we don't. And it's in that same mind, sports really pays society forward in terms of showing you how you can have that mass integration of minds and backgrounds and personalities and make it work. So sports plays a huge role. It's also a gathering place. If you look at the NFL, they stole Sunday from the church almost. It's like insane. Like, you go to church. When I go to church, my pastor's like, look, I ain't gonna keep y'all that long. I know kickoff is coming. Like NFL done stole from God. Like, it's amazing. So the point of it is, we congregate in few places. Like I said, religion or sports, there are few places you get all of the eyeballs. So when you have all the eyeballs, that responsibility comes from that platform, and you have to take care of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And to squeeze a little bit here, for your show, Speak for Yourself, on Fox Sports. You found a nice niche, and you've done a great job with that show. And you guys are, with your opinions and things and talking about various stuff. What are your goals for the show as it's evolved, and where you see it going in the future?
Yeah, I'm loving it, man. It's so good to be on a show where we're allowed to speak for ourselves, and we really live up to the name and to the mantra of having an opinion without being argumentative, without being dismissive. We speak from our own experience, which is our expertise. We support it with facts that map onto reality, but then we sprinkle in our opinions, which gives us that extra sauce, and it gives us that spice. And it's okay if you differ. It's okay if you think different. It doesn't matter what the subject matter is and the material is. There are a lot of different ways up that mountain. There's a lot of different ways to climb that same subject. So respect somebody else who thinks about it differently. And I've been in this business long enough that most shows, they don't approach it that way. They approach it where I'm right, you're wrong. And I did that, and that has a place. And I don't like that. I like the deep waters where there's enough room for all of us to swim and we all can get wet. We all can have fun. You know what I mean? And that's our show. Whoever comes on there, we're not going to dismiss you. We may clown you. We may joke with you. We may think you're crazy for thinking that, but we accept it. We accept what you're coming with. And if the world would be able to accept, no matter what you come with, chip in on the party, I think the world will be in a better place.
Absolutely. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, you're a Rose Bowl Institute advisory board member, and we can't thank you enough for being a part of that. And and what we're saying, educating through sports and uniting through sports. And so as we move forward and using sports as a way to educate, what would you like to see using from the Rose Bowl Institute and moving forward and starting the things that you just talked about?
Yeah. I hope I'm an example to all who's watching this, is that I never got a chance to play on the Rose Bowl field, but that's why I had to join the board. I had to be a part of it somehow. I had to get involved somehow. But in all seriousness, man, sometimes you got to smell the roses, man. And I mean that literally and figuratively, in the sense of this is an amazing honor to be a part of the Rose Bowl board. And as an advisor, I guess I should say, I just want to encourage everyone to look inward, to find their identity, find their purpose, and find your passion. Because when you find your passion, it doesn't become work. It just becomes something that you love to do, that you wish there were 25 hours in the day to support, to participate in. And everyone has that inner power to surpass, to overcome external circumstances. And I hear so many people say, but, and I keep going back to my own life, my own experiences, my own expertise. And I keep saying, well, my coaches used to tell me, they said, success is not guaranteed, but failure is. If you don't do the right things, you can guarantee yourself failure. And even if you do all the right things, you can't guarantee yourself success. So I remember sitting there in a special teams meeting, and our coach, the late, great Bruce DeHaven, said, hey, guys, I need all of you to give me 100% effort, because we are on special teams field goal block. Now, no one wants to be here, because you guys all want to be star offensive players or defensive players, but this is the special unit. So here's the thing. If you give me 100%, I can't guarantee you will ever block a kick. But if you don't give me 100%, I guarantee you'll never block a kick. I have lived through those words forevermore, and I hope more people understand what he meant by that.
Oh, that's absolutely fantastic. And that's a great way to end another great episode of Rose Bowl Live with Marcellus Wiley. Please check him out on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff. He's absolutely a fabulous follow. We look forward to having you join us again for another Rose Bowl Live in the future. But for more information on the Rose Bowl Legacy Foundation, please go to inspire2022.org. Or if you want to have information about the Rose Bowl Institute, make sure you go to rosebowlinstitute.org. Thanks again for joining us tonight. We hope to see you in sunny Pasadena at America Stadium, the Rose Bowl. Thanks so much.
You are looking live.
There's something sacred about this stadium and its setting. There's nothing like this venue, in my opinion, in all of sports.
The setting is about as good as anywhere in the country. With the San Gabriel Mountains in the backdrop, it's always picturesque.
We're going to play football. Yes, he's going for the corner. He's got it. Vince Young scores.